Hello and welcome to another Comics Burst from the Full Force podcast, sponsored by Distant Planet Comics and Collectibles, where we take an in-depth look at the newest G.I. Joe comics and related titles of the week, with me as your host, Chris. Thank goodness it's over, McLeod, aka Diagnostic 80. Joining me on this episode is Paddy, even happier that it's over, Lennon. On this instalment of your absolutely favourite kind of burst, we have a Transformers special where we discuss the final issues of the 13-year IDW run, and we take a little retrospective look at some of our favourite issues of years gone by. So without further ado, let's get stuck into this comics burst. First up, Transformers Unicron Issue 6, Earth War. With Unicron's ultimate goal revealed, the shaky alliance of Autobots and Decepticons is all that stands between Earth and the planet Eta. Heroes will rise and fall as Optimus Prime journeys into the dark heart of Unicron for the final confrontation with evil. At stake, the soul of a universe. Paddy, how did you find it?
I don't know.
I'm also undecided.
I've read it twice today. I picked it up today. I made a dangerous trip to Dublin City Centre on Black Friday to go pick up my comics, and you know, this is one of them. I don't know if it's a very satisfying conclusion to the series.
Yeah.
Essentially, Optimus Prime apologizes to Unicron, and it's all right.
Yeah.
That is. I'm sorry we murdered all of your planets and that you're really off that we killed your family, Unicron. Hug now, and they actually do hug. And then Unicron himself, as we've always thought he was going to do. And it just kind of ends. I mean, I'm being facetious. Obviously, there's a lot more to it than that. But I just... It suffers from all the same stuff. It's
a bit of a I found this one a bit, not disjointed as such, but it's a very much like almost like an art piece as opposed to an actual storyline. I know that sounds really odd because obviously there is there is a kind of pace through it.
I can see where you're coming from, and that it's very hard to get an emotional connection to it, right?
Yeah.
Like I didn't feel like this was the end of anything because obviously it isn't. I mean It's left in such a way that you could actually conceivably still tell stories in this universe if you really needed to.
Yeah.
Because the bulk of the cast survive. We can talk about the casualty list, but it essentially is Ironhide, Starscream, Optimus, and a handful of others who die.
Yeah.
And most of the rest of the main cast survives. I just think it's I don't know, it seems very low stakes or something, right?
You're right. There's not that satisfying conclusion isn't there. And again, you've got I don't know, again, I always bring it around to this, but the kind of token gesture of throwing in Scarlet, Matt Tracker, a couple, Action Man, Sergeant Savage, just like in and Rom. But I was kind of almost expecting something completely out of left field. But obviously this makes sense. You don't want to... we joked that it was the end of the universe and Unicron was just going to destroy everything and everything was going to go black, and it kind of almost did that, but didn't.
Like I said, it just. I think, and we'll talk about them in a few minutes. I think the other two ending issues were much stronger, and
Spoiler alert.
Sins of the Wreckers was much stronger as well. Like there is some really, really good bits to like in it. There's a bit, I think about 2 or 3 pages in, where Ironclaw, Miles Mayhem, and Dr. X are talking to each other, and Dr. X describes Miles Mayhem's team as basically a bunch of motorcycle boats. And that's putting him right in his place.
That's brilliant.
Which I really like. What's your motorcycle boat going to do against a thing that's eating planets? And she's not wrong.
With that said, Paddy, what would you give this particular issue? Then also the overall arc as a potating.
I think maybe it's a 2, and I think overall, I think a 2.5 is probably about where it needs to be. Again, this same issue is saved by a couple of little high points that I really liked. I really liked. The art was quite good.
Yeah.
Even though there are a lot of named artists on this book because they were delayed getting it out, and they were trying to get it done this month. And so everybody seems to have contributed a page here or there. But it didn't seem that disjointed, mainly because I think they gave the artists the characters they were supposed that they're most linked to. For example, Kei-Zama's pages are the pages with Ramaj and the other Junkions.
Yeah.
So, that's the character she designed. She draws her very, very well. It wasn't that jarring that she had done that page and so on. Like I said, there's another couple of bits as well. I didn't like the focus on Slide and the Torchbearers because I think they've been used too much to date.
Yeah.
The big payoff is that Slide becomes a Torchbearer because, her combiner partner obviously is dead, and the Torchbearers need a new combiner limb because they've lost one of their own as well.
Yeah.
So she joins that group, successfully combining the two worst groups in this continuity, the colonists and the Torchbearers as one entity.
Yeah.
Like I said, there just seem to be not very much. The Maximals don't seem to be a threat.
Yeah.
In it.
Not a strong enough threat, yeah.
No, because RC holds off a couple of hundred of them on her own. There's a bit where Prime and RC are following the suppository / talisman through Unicron's skin, and they're both blowing their way through hundreds of them, and you're like, well, then they're not really a threat, are they?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's almost like they need that, I don't know, that kind of throwaway army fodder. Just a shame they had to use the Maximals for that, really.
And you literally see Snake Eyes taking down Optimus Primal.
Yeah.
More or less on his own, So between him and the female Storm Shadow and a couple of Red Shadow ninjas, they've taken out Beast Megatron and Optimus Prime on their own. So, not really a threat, are they? If a couple of, well-trained G.I. Joe operatives can take out one without any significant damage to themselves. As a series overall, there's a couple of things I really liked. The concept of Unicron, it being a new concept for that character, where he's essentially a weapon of mass destruction created by, a race that Cybertronians killed as part of their war. I think that's a really good concept. I like that idea of how to use him in this continuity, but I don't think the rest of it really gelled as much as maybe I'd hoped, and I certainly don't think it justifies being the premium format, really expensive issue per issue that they're doing, because this is costing nearly $8 this issue, and the same for the other issues in this series. I don't think it's been good enough to justify 6 times $8.
Yeah, totally. Again, this one was kind of thrown together a little bit, really, wasn't it, with Unicron? It's always been just like a side. Just feels again like it's just been a little bit thrown together, and again we get those glimpses of G.I. Joe and Mars and Iron Claw and people like that, but it's not, again, it's like there's little point to their involvement at all. It's literally just the Transformers in battle. That's the only thing that's important with this. The other doesn't need to happen, does it, really? No,
it doesn't. I mean, you get a couple of nice bits, like a ram cycle shredding a Maximal apart of its minigun, but again, it's said, not in this issue, but in the Optimus Prime issue, that there's now 1 billion Cybertronians on Earth. So therefore, there was more than enough Cybertronians to take on however many Maximals there were.
Yeah.
There couldn't have been more. There couldn't have been more than 1 billion Maximals. So why G.I. Joe and the rest of those teams don't really need to be there, and you don't get a sense of the scale that the Earth is under threat from their attack.
Yeah.
It just doesn't seem urgent enough or something, what's happening in the series. So yeah, like I said, I think a 2 for this issue, and I think a 2.5 overall.
I'd have to agree with that. I think there's not much else to say. I mean, it's a 6-issue mini-series effectively that kind of ties in with the other ones going on, and I actually in a funny way preferred the Unicron series to the next one we're going to be looking at, the Optimus Prime series. But in this particular instance, the issue, I'm so kind of fed up of them really just, that they've really minimized all of the other players in the series. And again, it's just not necessary. All the Transformers stuff, it's almost like they've gone okay, well, the Transformers are the most important thing. Let's just have them have a space battle and everyone else just out, and we'll just do some nice, every now and again we'll just flash up a square panel that might have a couple of them in there, and then that's it, we'll move on, get on with it quickly. So that bugs me, and so I would have to agree. I think 2 for this issue, 2.5 overall. And you're right, it doesn't have that satisfying conclusion that you thought it might have. And again, let's move on to Optimus Prime. Optimus Prime issue 25. End of the road. The battle is over. Heroes have fallen. Worlds have died. Now Optimus Prime faces his final ordeal as past, present and future collide. Who will stand with him, and when it's all over, who will carry the mantle of Prime? So we start with this flashback. So this one felt like more of like an art piece to me. Like it felt like I don't know, almost like it wasn't really following a story necessarily, but more about kind of like being a bit pretty and showing off a little bit.
Well, I don't think it's supposed to. I mean, really, what it is, and there's a thing Barbara uses in the script for this that I kind of liked, where every page alternates either a flashback to a point of Optimus's life, presumably while he is dying.
Yeah.
He's seeing his life for his eyes, and then you get an alternate page with a character that Barbara's been following through the run and how they are now in the months after the Unicron series has ended.
Yeah.
So he's kind of part paying homage to Optimus as a character, and particularly the IDW Optimus, who's been, ever since he was introduced, has been kind of this flawed character.
Yeah.
He's not been the good, the shining, John Wayne archetype that previous Optimus Primes have been in Generation 1 continuity and other continuities. He's this flawed guy who's been doing the wrong things for his entire existence, but for the right reasons.
Yeah.
He's responsible for some really horrendous stuff when you think about it. Like, he is a war criminal. Optimus Prime in the IDW continuity.
Yeah.
The Autobots and Decepticons fought for millions of years. They didn't really care about collateral damage. Optimus Prime probably directly ordered the deaths of billions of people. And I think the question of this is Optimus reflecting on, well, did he do good, or did he just fight to make things less worse than they would have been?
Yeah. It is literally like a retrospective of his entire existence, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a bit actually where one of the flashback pages is to Optimus visiting the Dinobots on a planet that they have been fighting the Decepticons on, and Slag, in a fit of rage, kind of at the scale of the damage they've had to cause to defeat the Decepticons. They've lost thousands of Autobots and killed millions and billions of the inhabitants of the planet. Slag tells him, he doesn't care what the Autobots do, just that they accomplish their goals and get the results they need to get for him. He tells them, stop the Decepticons, and they do it, but they might have to destroy a planet. And it's something that, has been brought up in IDW continuity again and again, where worlds suffered because of what the Autobots and Decepticons did. And Optimus has responsibility for that, because he did take the path of, well, we have to resist Megatron at every turn. He could have stopped Megatron earlier in this continuity. He knew Megatron before the war even started.
Yeah. And
certainly in the earlier days of the war. And they had similar goals in that they wanted to effect change. It was just the pace at which that change was going to be effected. So really, they're both culpable in these losses.
Do you think that it makes it quite a bittersweet ending, doesn't it, as well? Like,
it is, because he saves the universe, but he saves the universe from an enemy he created.
Yeah.
An enemy that only exists because he does. So he can't really be said. Certainly, the idea of Optimus can't be said to be a hero. There's a bit where he's being eulogized at the end of the issue, and it says that he's a hero, a killer, and a liar.
Yeah.
Because all he did was, he caused a lot of devastation to hopefully prevent worse devastation.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, he lost 12 of the 13 colonies to Unicron.
Yeah.
And only stopped Unicron at the last possible second.
Here's a question for you, and it's purely hypothetical, obviously, because none of this is real anyway. And obviously it's all down to whoever writes it. But take Optimus Prime out of the conundrum. Do you think everything still happens the way it does? Hard question.
Yes.
when it's the way when the nature of the situation.
I think in the continuity of the IDW comics, he has been a driving force for the resistance to Megatron. Had he not been the force of personality the Autobots would have lost many, many times over.
Probably wouldn't exist, would they? Yeah.
And the resistance to the Decepticons would never have been as coherent as it was.
Yeah.
So, he probably stopped a lot of stuff, but also he dragged out a war
for millions of years.
For millions of years that cost billions of casualties.
Yeah.
And the Decepticons probably would have done most of it anyway. But again, did he make things better, or did he just manage to keep things the same for longer?
Yeah, totally.
And that's part of what this issue is trying to ask. And in the end, they're kind of basically saying, well, on balance, maybe the world, the universe is better that he had been in it.
Yeah.
But it's a very close run thing.
Yeah, you're probably talking about 20 people difference, aren't you? Out of billions.
Yeah, exactly. He might have saved a billion, having caused the deaths of 30 billion.
Could have been that Megatron ended up taking over the entire universe and like putting everything in order, but everyone's in like they're all under like that. They don't have the freedom, but everyone's still alive. That's probably what you'd end up having. I thought some of the artwork in this was absolutely sensational, including like some of the kind of like just the kind of nice kind of stationary scenes, like the kind of planets and stuff. But then there's one beautiful panel with this like screaming Unicron face with RC and Prime like right at the foot of it, and I just thought that is just gorgeous.
No, it is very high standard of artwork again, as we would expect from this series. I just really wish the artwork had been in service of probably a slightly better story overall. Yeah. I will say I think this issue is one of the better issues of the Optimus Prime series we've got. As much as we may find fault with certain items about it, it is a very solid issue, and I think it is a very good end to that character's story.
Do you know what I think makes it really, really solid? And this is again kind of a personal preference, and we'll find that out a little bit later on as well. But like, I love the Spotlight series, and this does feel like a like a very focused issue where we are looking at Prime. That's what we're looking at. We're looking at him, and like this could have been a Prime Spotlight if you take Unicron out of it and you take like the ending element of it, and you just have some of that kind of flashback moving into some other storyline at the end. It could have been a Spotlight. So I think that's one of the reasons I think it's good. I'm not sure how happy I am with it being the final issue, like just kind of like putting an end to it, to more or less everything. Again, like there's more satisfaction probably with this one than there is with the Unicron issue.
The Unicron issue, yeah. I know we're reviewing them slightly out of order for this podcast, but this is the final issue of all three ongoing series. This is the capper.
Yeah, this is it. This is Prime is done.
We're kind of, I think we're reviewing them in probably the right order, because this is probably the order they should have been read. Unicron issue 6 first, and then Optimus Prime, and then Lost Light, because in continuity time that's probably correct. Yeah. Because Lost Light is set a little bit later. Actually quite a lot later. So, we're reviewing them in the right order, but it was released as the final issue of this continuity when it came out today. Or sorry, not today, on Wednesday. Yeah. So as the capping issue, I don't know, I think it's a good enough ending. I think with the kind of the not great quality of what they've been producing the last year and a half, 2 years, getting a not great ending is okay.
No, I agree.
At least it's not actively bad.
Yeah.
It's probably not as good as we both would have hoped after 13 years, but I think it's better than it could have been.
Agreed. Another thing that kind of bothers me the last thing I'll moan about now, again, is the throwing in of by the way, here are G.I. Joe, Action Man, Sergeant Savage, Matt Tracker, Scarlet, etc. Rom. It's like just literally one strip, like one tiny little panel strip, and then that's there you go. That they were in it as well, and you're like, okay, great, thanks. And it's just I do like how RC kind of finishes it off. It
does make a bit of a mess of the combined universe, really, doesn't it? Because like they haven't really utilized it in the way maybe they should have.
No, I mean, it was just they're just there for the sake of being there. They're there because look what else was involved, and that is just like a kick in the nuts, really, isn't it? But yeah, I mean, overall though, what would you give Optimus Prime first as this issue on its own as a rating, and then as an overall series?
For this series finale, I think it's a 3. I do think it is a better capper issue than Unicron was.
Yeah.
Overall, I think you're probably going to be in the 2.5 region again, I'm afraid. I just think this series never really ignited. It never really caught our interest, except for the couple of issues where it was really plotted really excellently, and you know the ones we're talking about,
Oh,
obviously.
yeah, totally.
And otherwise, the series is not as good as I had high hopes for the series, because I liked Barber's storytelling and plotting ability. That guy can plot like nobody else can. He's brilliant at that. He's maybe not so great with characterization, but when it comes to retconning stuff and wrapping up loopholes and just sheer plot, oh my god, I did not see that coming. Barber's a great writer at that sort of stuff.
Yeah, totally.
But I don't think he was at his best here for quite a lot of this series. However, the series was saved by for the most part, exceptional artwork. So what can you do?
It's getting that balance, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, let's move through to the final issue of the three that we're looking at today. Lost Light, issue 25. More than met the eye. The quest is over, the dust has settled, and everything has changed forever. But before the fond farewells, before the parting of ways, before the unkept promises to stay in touch, there's time, surely there's time, for one last drink. Right, Paddy, make it a good one, because this is the last Transformers issue we're ever reviewing ever from IDW. That's a big shout when I'm already thinking they've lost it, but they probably haven't.
Well, no, I mean, we have Star Trek Transformers, and then whatever they do with their reboot next year.
Well, we'll wait and see, shall we?
Assuming there is a next year.
I know Unicron could eat us still.
This is a strange one, because again, it uses the same time jumpy thing that Optimus Prime 25 does, but it does it a lot more haphazardly.
Yeah.
Whereas Optimus Prime keeps it to, odd pages are flashbacks, even pages are present day. In this, it's all over the shop, and you, unless you're paying very close attention,
which I never do, you
don't know if it's the 800 odd years in the future or just weeks after the Unicron series ended.
Yeah.
And possibly shorter, because Prowl, when you see him in the present day stuff, for want of a better phrase, he's still damaged in the same way he was at the end of Unicron.
Yeah.
With the missing eye. His eye is still missing. And that's actually part of the reason why we held off reviewing these three, because we knew Lost Light spoiled at least slightly the end of Unicron and Optimus Prime. Because obviously Prowl is alive in this after the events of Unicron. So it basically, it's split between in the weeks after the defeat of Unicron, and then 800 years after the defeat of Unicron, when the crew meet up again one last time to celebrate, or well, celebrate is probably the wrong word, but attend Ratchet's funeral. And like I said, the time jump thing, it's quite unclear, and I think I would have liked something visual to help differentiate what period you're looking at. You can tell because certain characters are missing. Obviously, Ratchet is dead. Ratchet does not appear in the pages where he's supposed to be dead, and Nautiga doesn't appear in the 800 years in the future scenes either. So if you keep an eye on who's in what scene, you'll know. But otherwise, you can't really tell. They're all in the same designs for the most part. They've still got their same body types, except for Drift and one or two others. But Rodimus looks more or less the same. Magnus looks more or less the same.
Megatron looks the same. Yeah.
Yeah. So I did find that kind of irritating on my first read through. I read it again and got it a bit better, understood it a bit better. I don't know if it gives the closure I would have liked in terms of for certain characters. They just,
Well, they form this new gang, don't they, at the end, basically?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
They, but a lot of them are living together happily ever after, or not. Chrome Dome and Rewind have a very, very bittersweet existence. Ratchet is obviously dead, so Drift is lost. Whirl has spent the last 800 years since the end of the war effectively in prison in Garrus 10, the replacement to Garrus 9.
Which I thought was really sad.
Yeah, because he can't adjust to life in the real world anymore. When there's nobody to hit, he has decided that he's better off incarcerated, and he goes out and commits petty crimes to get himself put away.
What made me quite sad about that was the fact that, his end, we didn't know what he was going to be doing. We didn't know if he was alive or not, effectively, from the last issue. So it was kind of that thing of he's one of my favourite characters, and for him to kind of go that route, I was kind of like, oh, that's so sad. Like, it's quite tragic, really.
And actually, it kind of walks back some of the character growth we got in the last couple of issues where he was able to open a matrix.
Exactly, yeah.
It's like he's regressed. And actually, that's something, it's something that it seems to have happened to a lot of the characters. The stuff that they went through in this series doesn't seem to have really had a lasting impact. Nobody can still remember who Rung is after, so that character's sacrifice didn't have as much value as maybe it had in the last issue where he had where he signed the planet "Don't Forget Me." It didn't work. And that's kind of disappointing. Now, I know the new Cybertronians that are beginning to be born, the Lunarians, a lot of them bear similar traits. But it's a kind of a shame that his friends for the last 80-odd issues don't remember him at all anymore. Even weeks after he left them, because in one of the present-day scenes, Rewind says, "Oh, we found this room we never saw before. It's like got all these model spaceships and a couch and everything."
Yeah.
So obviously it's Rung's office and they've forgotten about who he was.
Yeah.
Which I think is very, very sad. I mean, I guess we should probably discuss the ending of it, the complete cop-out ending.
So let's go travelling for the rest of our lives, guys. Yeah, let's do that.
Essentially, so in the weeks after the Unicron battle, they decide, well, what we can do is we can use two of the story elements that we've cooked up over the last couple of years, the alternative universes and the time travelling things, to jump the ship and created quantum duplicate of the Lost Light and simultaneously jump it into another universe where maybe possibly somewhere out there a direct copy of the cast as they were in the weeks after the Unicron battle and the battle against the other functionist Cybertron can live out their existence in an alternate universe as if nothing ever happened. In one way, I can understand why they did it. That is essentially James Roberts saying to all the people who write slash fiction on Tumblr, well, go on, you can create your own stories with these characters now.
Yeah.
They can go off and write each other in another alternate universe.
It's nice to have a happy ending, I suppose. But I suppose out of the three, you've got Prime dying in both of the other two, haven't you, I suppose? And then at least this one, there's like a little bit of like an uplift at the end. But
also, I also think it completely undercuts the concept of the characters having grown.
Yeah.
They went on this quest because they didn't know what to do with themselves after the war. And they found a purpose and found, who they really were. They were no longer soldiers in the aftermath of the war ending. They went and became adventurers and became friends and so on. And then you send them, so they've grown by in the scene set 800 years in the future. Some of them have moved on. They've made lives for themselves.
Yeah. And
then you kind of undercut that by saying, but also, wouldn't it be great if they just stayed forever as they were?
Yeah.
So it's hard to say that this is an ending because the characters in a way are now preserved in amber forever.
Yeah, it's like an open ending in a way, isn't it? It's almost like it's funny how I think again, like if you're gonna cut it dead like completely, then you have to off some characters, like some major ones, so that it just becomes like there's not much left, or they go out in a blaze of glory or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only way you could probably end it without having a couple of loose ends still floating around. But I know what you mean though. That feeling of everything is a little bit of a cop out. I totally agree with that. In terms of like a final issue for the series, what would you give it rating wise, and overall, what would you give The Lost Light as a rating?
I think it's an average to good issue. It's probably 3.5. I don't. Again, there's been an issue with this series, and I've had it since it rebooted as Lost Light. I don't think it has been as good as it should have been, and I do think it ran out of steam maybe a year or two ago, and should probably have been put to bed a lot quicker than this.
Yeah.
As an ending, it's grand. You get your moment with each character, for better or worse. Like I said, I do think they've shortchanged certain characters. I do think they've walked back a little bit of character growth for some reason I can't really understand. I also think there's a little bit of dialogue in here that's actually kind of embarrassing.
Okay.
Stuff like Ratchet's last phrase, last word was bugger. Like, so he uses the most English of colloquial expressions, and I know I sent this message to you during the week where someone had asked James Roberts, what voice he would cast different characters on, and he always said, oh, they always sound the same to me. And I was almost tempted to respond to him saying, yeah, me too, James.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing we've always brought up here, where everybody is kind of painfully English.
It's funny actually, because I when I kind of read comics, I read a lot of the characters in their cartoon voices. So right. I'll hear all these different like voice actors over the years.
Well, how does it work for series like this where most of the characters didn't actually appear in previous fiction?
I still get a voice in my head though, telling me to burn things. No, a voice in my head saying like like Rung, for example. I have a certain voice
just
in my
Kate,
head.
Isn't it?
Yeah, she's like, stop burning things, is what Kate says to me.
Burn stuff.
Okay, well, I'd have to agree pretty solidly on the ratings as well. I think I'm going to go. The issue's pretty good as a Lost Light issue, and again they've been going up and down. In I would give it a 3 overall. I think for the whole series, mainly because the inconsistency has been a bit kind of apparent. But again, I don't want to diss it too much because I have enjoyed a large majority of the IDW run. It's just, you're right. I think we all got to the point where it's like, especially when we knew that the universe was ending, I think we all kind of thought, okay, yeah, we're done now. Do you know what I think Revolution had a lot. I think the combined universe had a lot to do with that. That
was a quite clear sign that they had run out of ideas.
Yeah, and also, yeah, it was just a little bit kind of there was a lot going on every couple of weeks. I was picking up 5 or 6 issues in this run, and it's like, wow, I've just read 5 or 6 issues in 3 weeks that cover the same things, cover the same ground. Nothing else it hasn't expanded, it hasn't developed, hasn't gone anywhere. It's just covered the same ground. And then this slow build to having Unicron get to Earth, it was just like, just hurry up and punch the place for God's sake. Anyway, so that's the end of the IDW Transformers universe. My goodness, what a run. 13
years. And I never missed an issue.
Yeah, same. We've been on it for like that entire run. So let's move on to the final segment. And that's where Paddy and I are going to go through a little bit of a retrospective, picking our top 3 issues personally. I say issues, kind of our story arcs more so. Paddy, if you'd like to go first with your 3rd pick, and then I'll do my 3rd, and then you 2nd, and so on and so forth.
I'll do my 3rd pick, and I figured we would talk a little bit about the Spotlight issues.
Oh yeah, definitely.
When we were here, because we're both acknowledged fans of those storylines. I'm picking one that maybe a lot of people are going to be like, huh, really?
No, you picked one I wanted to use, actually.
Really?
Yeah, I love this issue.
I picked Spotlight Nightbeat.
Brilliant.
Now, it's not my favourite of the Spotlights. That will always and forever be Spotlight Shockwave. But I think I wanted to talk about Spotlights, and I think this is a very good one, just because there is a palpable sense of dread and mystery in this issue.
Big time. That
I really, really, really like. It feels like a real mystery. It's a character that, Nightbeat, Furman, of course, wrote this issue, and Furman used Nightbeat a little bit towards the end of the original Marvel US run and Marvel UK run. Nightbeat was in there in kind of one-off kind of noir. Whenever Furman wanted to write a little bit of a noir story, he stuck Nightbeat in there. In this series, using him in the way they did, I think was a very good introduction to use him as essentially the Autobots investigator, and that whenever he had nothing pressing to do for the Autobot cause, he would go off and just investigate whatever mysteries took his fancy. And of course, in this issue, his inquisitiveness gets him into trouble. And like I said, there is a real feeling of what's he going to discover, and oh no, he's in trouble.
Yeah.
By the end of the issue, and he does get in quite a lot of trouble towards the issue. So I think it's definitely one of Furman's stronger Spotlight issues. It links into the overall arcing story he was telling about the Dead Universe as well. But like I said, I really like it just from it was something different. It was a nice little declaration of intent that this universe is going to be a little different. We're going to tell an adult story that's a little bit more grown up. It's not just a rip-off of a Dashiell Hammett novel
Yeah.
It's something else, and we're going to use some of those characters you're familiar with and use them in different ways, and that's why I picked this one as my third choice.
Awesome. I agree. Like, in actual fact, I would when you sent me your top three, I was like, oh, I love that issue. It's really good. And I was kind of going through the spotlights, kind of thinking which ones, really stood out to me. Nightbeat was one, but my third spot, I'm actually giving to. I'm not sure if this is going to be controversial or not, because I know, like, as a character, he's pretty derided in the fandom. But I absolutely loved the Wheelie spotlight for my third spot, and for my third spot. And it's one of those issues that, I mean, it had a lot of similarities to another issue I'm going to talk about in my top three. But what I really liked about it was, again, this thing of, like, taking a character that is, again, like, not very cool, not very, like, might not even be that interesting, but I don't know, kind of giving them so much more by adding this kind of level of storyline. And it was kind of like it's not an origin, but it kind of, like, it gives you an idea as to how Wheelie came about, how he is, like, now in the current kind of format.
Mm-hmm.
Now he's, like, constantly overlooked due to his stature, strangely enough. So there's a nice kind of, like, overarching kind of, I don't know, kind of topical commentary on that.
I do remember the controversy at the time this was announced, and people were like, "What, really?"
Yeah, exactly.
Like, really?
But
actually, it ends up being a really solid issue.
Yeah. And then the fact that he goes out, kind of, he's eager to help the Autobot war effort, and like I said, just completely overlooked. When he finally is asked to go and check out habitable worlds, he's really excited. He flies out there. He then hits a radiation belt, ends up crash landing on the world of LV-117, which is a planet that is just literally inhabited by horrible, giant, scary monsters. He does what he can to survive, fends off all sorts of horrible things, ends up getting really badly injured, has his arm ripped off, and then has to retrieve it out of a beast's which I think is hilarious. Once he retrieves it and tries to put it back on, it doesn't properly transform, and therefore when he tries to transform again, it causes him all sorts of horrible pain. So there's, like, this really, like, I mean, he is, like, he's in a inhospitable world. He's in agonizing pain for most of it, and he's in terror for most of it as well. He ends up tracking some crashed ship, which is these Decepticons, Spectro and Spyglass, preparing to torture an alien. This alien turns out to be Varta, who we see kind of, like, throughout the issues, kind of, a little bit here, there, and everywhere. And basically, this alien speaks through a voice kind of box, which is, like, puts everything into rhymes. So straight away, like, Wheelie's, like, exposed to this, and he basically ends up picking that rhyming speech up in the process. So, like, he kind of, like, that, over the years and years and years that he's there, like, he starts talking in rhyme, and it's like, oh, that's why. So he kind of basically goes mental. And I love the fact that in this issue, like, you get a few things, like, explained as to why he is the way he is, but there's, like, just a really amazing thing where he tricks these Decepticons into taking his ship. And he basically stays behind with this Varta guy, and then the ship flies off and then blows up because Wheelie basically just set a explosive on it to blow up. So it's like, he kind of gets his own back on them, and then once they've salvaged the ship, him and Varta fly off. So it's like, I just liked it as a like a nice little thing to show the kind of that he's gone through and why he is the way he is. And I just thought it was really cute. And obviously the actual issue is really good as well. Like, there's, it's just a really solid issue. Simon Furman wrote it, and Klaus Schawinski drew it. It's really beautiful, really cool issue. And on top of that, you get some, like, it's almost like a little kind of, and there's lots of homage to the movie in this. Obviously, like, Wheelie now has his silly little kind of rhyming voice. And on top of that, there's this wall painting of a Quintesson that you see at the end of the issue as it's like as I think as they've left, or like this kind of, like, shift happens.
It's the last panel,
yeah, and it kind of cracks the wall that this Quintesson painting's on, and then you see the eyes glowing through the rock, and it's like, oh, it's the Quintesson. So, like, I like what they did with that. But anyway, that's my third place. Paddy, coming back to you, and what's your second place?
The second place is the big daddy of them all, is Infiltration. The Infiltration series as a whole.
The one that started it all, right?
The one that started it all so far, 13 years ago, Furman and E.J. Sue. It is looking back on it, it is an excellent start
Yeah.
to the series. If the first Michael Bay movie had been an adaptation of this story arc,
Yeah.
and remember these were being written around the same time as the Bay movies were starting to come out.
Yeah.
This would have been a very okay Transformers movie.
Yeah.
Especially if they'd adapted a couple of the other story arcs that followed it, Escalation and Devastation. But as a kickoff to a new continuity, I think it's very effective.
Yeah.
The Transformers look different, but also keep those classic looks, so you know who everybody is. You get using Ratchet as the opening character. I think it was very effective in differentiating it from what had gone before. Of course, you had Bumblebee in there as well, obviously in later issues of that series. But it works, and E.J. Sue's art is fantastic. Like I'm actually kind of saddened that he didn't keep with IDW. I know he got a couple of issues and a couple of covers towards the end this year.
I know, yeah.
But it's a shame he didn't get a bit more chance to stick with the brand and the comic and show what he could really do, because I think when he's on the book, he is excellent.
Absolutely, yeah, totally agree with that.
But it's I know a lot of people at the time complained it was too slow of a burn, and they wanted, we want robots fighting each other on Cybertron, so much so that Stormbringer was advertised as it's robots fighting each other on Cybertron. but you think that one of the character who's introduced in the first page of that, Verdi Carlo, is still with us 13 years later. Like, she's the only character to make it through the whole thing.
Yeah, which again is a nice bookend, isn't it?
Because Bumblebee died and was missing for a couple of years there,
and
Ratchet's been around on the Lost Light, obviously, but like it's her and him are Ratchet are the only two constants in this. In this Transformers, like they've always been present, even if Verity only really hung around with the Wreckers. But she's been through the entire series.
Yeah.
As has Ratchet.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. And so for my number 2, I have gone a little bit of I've done a little bit of a cheat, and it's not so much a story arc or issue or that kind of thing. It's actually a character development that I was so on board with early on, and then it kind of just dissipated a little bit. It happened to a couple of the characters actually, but I'm going to focus on this one. So I'm talking about the character change that was Perceptor, and how he went from, basically being this kind of like scientist, very, very much advisor, not so much kind of like battle hardened or anything like that. And then he goes in a couple of issues, I think it's Spotlight Drift and Lost and Found. Basically, he ends up accompanying Cup on a mission to rescue some wreckers. He gets badly injured during the operation, saved by Drift, so that happens in Spotlight Drift. After healing from his injuries, he decides to make loads of upgrades to his actual body, making him like a warrior, a useful warrior. He basically makes himself this like near impervious breastplate, aiming arms stabilizers, and a monocle-like targeting optic, and he basically becomes a sniper. And this like little, again, it happened over about 5 or 6 issues through All Hail Megatron and like those issues I mentioned before. And he turns into this completely different, like hard-edged kind of, killer. And I thought the actual like the way they did it in that kind of run, and again All Hail Megatron, again I feel like All Hail Megatron was very much like Optimus Prime, very up and down, very inconsistent, but the good bits were really, really good. The bad bits though were kind of really, really bad.
God awful. Yeah.
But like I said, this Perceptor kind of development I thought was absolutely superb. They did a similar thing with RC, which I really enjoyed as well, like made her this kind of assassin for hire, kind of crazy, just awesome, bad character. And I get drawn to those. Whirl is another one, but I know he had more kind of like a sadistic kind of comedy to him. But these two were just downright bad. Like they switched and they just became this new thing within the Autobots. And yeah, what they did with Perceptor I thought was really good, and I was really upset that it didn't really continue. You didn't really see Perceptor used in that way much after that kind of run of issues. But again, like he also popped up in the Wreckers, and but that's my number 2 goes to the character development of Perceptor. And now Your number one, Paddy?
Well, obviously, it was always going to be Last Stand of the Wreckers, wasn't it? This series, and I know when we had Nick on the show a few months ago, he kind of said it was almost pretty much an afterthought on the behalf of IDW editorial, because they were much more focused on Mike Costa's ongoing and Xander Cannon's Bumblebee series. It's probably surprising that those IDW editors now that Wreckers is the thing that's held up and is going to sell forever as a trade paperback.
Yeah, big time.
Whereas those two, the Costa series and Cannon's series, have never been collected since their initial releases. Wreckers has had 3 separate collections at this point. Looking at my shelf over here, we have the complete omnibus, we have a hardcover, we have a paperback, as well as a 6, and it sold out multiple printings of when it was in individual issues. It is the high point of IDW. I'm not afraid to say it, and I know I'm maybe biased because Nick Roach is a local fella, done good, but I think it is the epitome of what you can do when you give a good artist and a good writer the liberty to go off and do something.
Yeah. Big time.
And it's not a surprise that essentially this series has kept third-party Transformers companies in business for the last 8 to 10 years, as they make all of the characters from this as unofficial toys, because Hasbro never did. I do not generally buy third-party Transformers. I don't have the money, nor the time, nor the patience. But I will tell you, I have bought the entire cast of the Last Stand of the Wreckers as third-party toys.
Yeah, big time.
And it's the only one I have. I bought third-party Impactor. I bought Topspin and Twin Twist. I bought
Springer.
I bought Iron Fist. Actually, to be fair, the Generation Springer is a pretty good Springer.
It's true.
So he's legit, but the rest of the cast are not legit. So that and of course Overlord. Obviously, he made Overlord a thing again.
Pull your finger out, Hasbro and Takara. We want masterpiece Wreckers.
To be fair, they've gotten better, and they have really given us some pretty decent Wreckers involved toys, like that Generation Springer we mentioned there, and of course the Titans Return Overlord from last year. But isn't it amazing how much of an effect it had on the fandom?
Oh yeah, massive.
This book is probably responsible for a fairly hefty chunk of the growth of this fandom over the last 8 to 10 years.
You ask everyone at TF Nation what their favourite iteration of IDW comics is, and I guarantee every single one of them will say the Wreckers.
I think so, and I think it's helped grow the fan base immensely, as much as More Than Meets the Eye did. More Than Meets the Eye wouldn't have happened without Wreckers.
Agreed.
Because it was also James Roberts' first time helping out with writing when Nick fell behind, and it's just a series that fires on all cylinders. You don't need to have much of a connection to Transformers previously. It's a done-in-one story. You don't need to have done much reading. You don't even have to do much reading afterwards. You don't have to read the sequel series if you don't want to.
Yeah. It
is a nice done-in-one, collected in one trade paperback, and you can give it to a friend and say, "Here, read this."
Yeah.
And they'll probably be quite happy you did it to them.
Totally. No, I agree, and I think it would have been my number one had you again not thrown it in and sent me the message before I could get back to you. But what I've done is I've gone with another spotlight, and this one hits hard in multiple areas, testicles and the heart. But also it has even more of a stronger connotation when you link it to what's happened in recent times. So I have gone for my number one of my favourite kind of comics of all time. And one of the reasons I've gone for this particular issue is because it's stayed with me this entire time, and that is Spotlight Cup. Because this one was harrowing. It was really sad. It had loads of fallout, in the issue, not in no controversy around it or anything. But there was this when I read it initially, I thought, oh my God, is this the best comic I've ever read? I just thought it was brilliant. Now, big shout out again to Nick Roche, who, again, he illustrated and wrote this, so he's getting all the plaudits in our number ones. And that wasn't, I mean, I didn't even realise Nick had been involved with this until we interviewed him. So that was nice to find out, really. Well, I say find out, it never dawned on me.
You obviously knew it because, you'd read the credits page, but it just slipped your mind.
I imagine so.
Right?
Yeah, oh, totally.
Yeah.
But, so basically, this plane crashes on this desert kind of planet. The guy who survives it sees this vehicle coming towards him. It transforms and it's Cup. He basically asks for help, whatever, and Cup just kills him. He decapitates him with a club and just destroys him. Okay, so we learn later on that he's also crashed on this planet with no hope of being rescued, but he gets this weird sense of hope from these crystals, right? So these crystals are giving him this weird, basically messing with his mind. And it turns out that before that, you get these Autobots kind of coming in to try and rescue Cup. Now, Cup can't tell what these people... these crystals make his mind so messed up that he sees them as zombies. And he fights them off. And, this has been going on for, years and years and years. They've been sending people down, soldiers down, to try and rescue him, and he just keeps killing more and more of these. Some get away, some don't, and it turns out that they've literally been trying to get him back for years because of the obviously how important he is to the Transformers. He's an important part of the training that they've all had. He means a lot to a lot of people, but a lot of people have been killed in this kind of mission to try and rescue him. And the sad thing is that Cup just keeps thinking, these zombies appear at night, and he's just terrified. His spark's going to explode. They can't use any weapons on the planet because it could blow up. The planet could go into this crazy explosion because of the crystals. And obviously Cup's spark is threatening to blow, everything up as well. So it's one of those things where do we keep sending more people down and so on and so forth, and more people die? But it's no, they have to keep doing it. They have to try something. In the end, I believe it's I can't remember who it was now. Trail
Cutter?
Is it Trailbreaker?
It is Trail Cutter, as he was called back then.
Oh, it's the force field thing, isn't it?
To name. Yes.
Yeah, so he Trailbreaker kind of goes down there with no armor, protected by a force field. It shocks Cup, but he's then able to secure and prevent any disaster happening. They get him back on board. Springer and Trailbreaker try and sort him out. He's kind of messed up, and this is where they introduced the cigar, wasn't it? I'm pretty sure they introduced the cigar here to kind of basically to help him in keeping his condition contained. But the whole thing is holy they've just had loads and loads of Autobots have been killed in trying to kind of rescue one guy, and the whole argument is, was this worth it? And they even that's thrown up at the end. It's was this worth it? We've just had I don't know the numbers. I think maybe hundreds killed, and that's
certainly dozens. Yeah,
and that affects Cup as well at the end. When he finds out he's been killing his brothers and his people in trying to rescue him, it's really difficult for him. He is definitely kind of changed, as an Autobot through this process. So obviously when in the current, we could fast forward to now, and in the Transformers Visionaries issue, he's killed so quickly by the visionary magic, by I forget her name already. Virilina, thank you. So when he's killed by Virilina, it wasn't a surprise. There was a lot of controversy around it, and I was also a little bit kind of oh, Cup, especially after reading the Spotlight. And I'm feeling that has been with me ever since that issue, because it's such a harrowing read, and the art's really dark, and it's just really sad, isn't it? And
there's the fact that they bring the crystals into continuity later on because they're Ore 8 in the 13 Ores. Yeah. The planet is later named to be called Tishishi, I believe.
Yeah.
TSEIHSHI. So I don't know how you'd pronounce that. Someone could probably clarify that for us later on. But the fact that they were able to bring that in and retcon it essentially into being one of the Cybertronian ores was a little bit of nice patchwork there, John Barber.
I do like the fact that there was a lot of that with the spotlights, like everything interweaved so like beautifully with what was going on. I feel like the Spotlight series in general was like the best way to do like accompanying issues. Like it's not the regular run, but it's connected to the continuity. You can still do a story of a particular individual. It's really interesting. It shows some origin. It shows maybe it just shows like them in the current time period doing something like a specialism of theirs. But it shows you like a little flashpoint, but then it works and weaves itself beautifully into the ongoing continuity. So I think that the Spotlight series is one of the most like not important, but one of the best executed series that we've had. Obviously, the Wreckers is up there too, with it probably even number one. But yeah, I mean, overall, Paddy, we've come to the end of a 13-year Transformers run. How do you feel? Exactly the same.
The phrase we keep using tonight is bittersweet. I mean, it is the longest Transformer story that has ever been told, and probably will ever be told. Like, you won't get a 13-year run of a single continuity of a comic nowadays.
No, you won't get 13 years of anything now.
It'll never happen again. The only thing that's lasted 13 years recently is like Supernatural. It's still going strong, but TV series don't last that long. Movie series typically don't last that long. I mean,
even successful ones, yeah.
13 years ago, the Marvel Cinematic Universe didn't exist.
Yeah, amazing.
The Transformers movies have stopped using that continuity that launched around the same time as IDW have launched. Like, it's essentially it's outlasted the movie continuity.
Yeah, impressive.
When you think about it that way, and it's outlasted Generation 1, which itself only lasted about 9 years at its peak. So, like, there's a lot to be said about it. I mean, it lasted as long because, for the most part, it was good. There was some very good comics in there. Things like Last Stand, things like some Word Meets the Eye, the first 2 seasons, first 50-odd issues of Word Meets the Eye. They can stand up with any other comic that's being published at the moment as examples of excellent comics.
Yeah, big time.
So, overall, they produce some very, very good stuff. Some very, very good comics, not just good Transformers comics. Licensed comics have a tendency to be kind of looked down upon because it's not real work. Creators don't really see it as, you'll never get an A-list creator working on Transformers because it would be seen as a step down for many of them. If you're working on Spider-Man or whatever, you're not going to go working on Transformers, because even though Spider-Man is essentially, Spider-Man has been fan fiction since the 1970s, and Stan Lee stopped writing it and the fans started coming on board. The people who'd been attracted to Spider-Man by Stan Lee's writing started writing it. It's been fan fiction ever since. But even so, Transformers and other licensed books kind of looked down upon because as if there's no art in it.
Yeah.
And frequently IDW stuff, the Transformers continuity, has been art. Like, there are works there that are as good as anything else that's been published, and it's something that the writers and artists and the colorists and letterers should be proud of. Like, they should be proud of their work that they've done over the last 13 years on this.
Totally, yeah.
Because they're even when the comics were really, really horribly bad, they were readable. Well, with the exception of Costa's run, there's really no saving that. But 90% of what they've produced has been readable. 10 to 15% of it has been excellent.
Yeah.
And that's as good as you're going to get in comics nowadays, I think.
Yeah, and I mean, I feel like it's a bittersweet kind of symphony. I won't put the music in the background. That feeling of like this has kind of come to an end now, but most of the things that we've been like enjoying over the years, they've all rebooted, they've all switched up and changed and done different things. It's just that this has been going so long, it almost feels like the furniture. Like, it feels like everything, this is the foundation. If you remove that, or if you reboot that, then you're going to be moving house, aren't we?
It's going to be weird to go to a comic book shop next month and pick up my regular list, which I've been buying. Like, the comic shops I started buying the IDW comics verse in are no longer there. They've been replaced by other comic shops.
Crazy.
Like the comic shop where I buy everything now did not exist when this started. The comic book shop, like I was in college when this continuity started. Since then, I've met my wife, married my wife, adopted 2 cats, bought a house, and worked in 3 different jobs. Similar jobs, but 3 different employers. And the one constant I've had has been this comic series. It's going to be very strange going into a comic book shop next month and not having an issue to pick up.
Yeah, big time.
Because I've dropped, at the time when I started the IDW comic series, the IDW Transformer series, I was picking up quite a lot of other stuff. And now I've dropped nearly all of the other stuff. The Comics Burst next month is going to be very, very short because I literally will have 2 comics.
Well, I'm sure we can spread it out a bit.
I am not reading GoBots.
Well, you can leave that to the others. That's fine.
Unless they start sending us review copies by PDF, I am not reading GoBots. I'm not paying money for that.
Okay, I actually really enjoyed it, but that's on a different Comic Burst. Well, we've come to the end then of the Transformers universe. 13 years of IDW Transformers universe, fantastic. You're right, we do still have Transformers versus Star Trek for Transformers. It is a different continuity completely, but again, it's been an interesting ride, and it's one that obviously, hopefully next year we can start afresh with a completely different reboot and series and creative teams. So really looking forward to what they have in store. Also a little bit anxious, not sure if it's going to be something I'm that interested in. I mean, could be. That's a fear.
Back of my mind as well.
It's a fear, isn't it? I mean, if it's something if they do something and it's like, oh no, this is right up my street, then great. But if it's something that's more geared a different direction, maybe a younger audience or whatever, then I don't know. We'll see how it goes. It's been an absolute pleasure, and we will be back with our regular Comics Burst next week. So that's it for this instalment of the Full Force Comics Burst. Thank you to my awesome co-host, Paddy Lennon. See you next time, and as always, Full Force. Make sure you get involved with the discussion by liking, sharing and commenting on these videos, and as always you can keep up with the show after listening by following on Twitter @TheFullForce, liking the Facebook page facebook.com/TheFullForce, and if you would like to contact the show you can message us on either of those platforms with feedback, questions or just a troll. Look out for more of these comic bursts on Podbean, iTunes, Stitcher, our Facebook page, Twitter feed and YouTube channel from now on. Full Force. And a big shout out to our sponsors, Distant Planet Comics and Collectibles, located at 601 Business Loop 70 West Suite 263, located in the Parkade Center, Columbia, Missouri. You can visit their website at distantplanetcomics.com and on Facebook at facebook.com/distantplanetcomics.